What happens when a prince thinks he can walk into Britain's most watched breakfast show and demand special treatment? In just 34 seconds, one heated exchange would expose the true character of a royal who forgot that respect is earned, not inherited. The Good Morning Britain studio buzzed with its usual pre-show energy. Susanna Reid adjusted her notes one final time, her professional smile masking the slight tension she always felt before difficult interviews. Across from her, the guest chair sat empty, waiting for Prince Harry to arrive for what was supposed to be a routine discussion about his latest charity work. 2 minutes to air, called the floor manager. Co-host Ben Shefford leaned over to Susanna. Ready for this? Always am, she replied, though something felt different about today. The prince's representatives had been unusually demanding about the interview conditions, insisting on certain topics being off limits. Richard Madeley, seated at the far end of the desk, shuffled through his own notes. Hope he's more interesting than his brother was last time, he muttered under his breath. The studio doors opened, and Prince Harry strode in, flanked by 2 security personnel. He barely acknowledged the production team as he took his seat, his jaw set in a way that suggested this wasn't going to be the friendly chat everyone expected. Good morning, Susanna said warmly as they went live. We're joined now by Prince Harry to discuss his upcoming charity initiative. Your Highness, thank you for being with us. Harry's response was curt. Thank you for having me, though I do hope we can keep this focused on what matters. The first warning sign. Susanna maintained her professional composure, but viewers could sense the slight shift in atmosphere. This wasn't the usual Harry they'd seen in previous interviews. Of course, Susanna continued. Let's start with your new project, helping veterans. Can you tell us what inspired this particular initiative? Look, Harry said, leaning forward slightly. I think we need to be clear about something from the start. I'm here to talk about serious issues, not to be entertainment for your morning audience. The studio fell silent for a beat. Even Ben raised his eyebrows at the unexpected hostility in the prince's tone. Susanna, ever the professional, smiled politely. Absolutely, and we're grateful you're here to discuss these important matters. Our viewers are genuinely interested in your work. Are they? Harry shot back. Or are they more interested in gossip and speculation? Because if that's what this is going to be, I can leave right now. The tension was palpable. Camera operators glanced at each other, unsure whether to keep rolling or cut away. But Susanna had dealt with difficult guests before, and she wasn't about to let this derail the interview. Your Highness, we're here to discuss your charity work, which is exactly what you wanted, she said, her voice remaining calm and measured. Perhaps we could start with how this new initiative will help veterans who are struggling with mental health issues. Harry's expression didn't soften. Mental health is a serious subject, not something to be trivialized in a breakfast television format. These people deserve better than being discussed between weather updates and cooking segments. Richard Madeley couldn't help himself. Well, we do take these topics very seriously here. In fact, we've won awards for our mental health coverage. Have you? Harry's voice dripped with skepticism. And what exactly qualifies any of you to discuss such complex issues? What's your background in psychology or trauma therapy? The attack was so unexpected and unprovoked that even Ben looked taken aback. Susanna felt the familiar surge of protective instinct she got when someone attacked her team, but she kept her response professional. We don't claim to be therapists, she said evenly. We're journalists who provide a platform for experts and for people like yourself who are doing important work. Our role is to ask the right questions and let you share your message with our audience. Your audience, Harry repeated, as if the words left a bad taste in his mouth. And what exactly do you think your audience cares about? Do you think they're sitting there genuinely concerned about veterans' mental health? Or are they just waiting for me to say something controversial they can share on social media? The comment hung in the air like a challenge. Susanna could feel the entire studio holding its breath, waiting to see how she would respond to such a direct insult to their viewers. I think you'd be surprised, she said, her voice still steady but with a slight edge creeping in. Our audience includes veterans, military families, healthcare workers, and people who genuinely care about the causes you represent. They tune in because they want to be informed about important issues. Do they? Harry pressed. Or do they tune in for the spectacle? Let's be honest about what this really island. This is entertainment dressed up as journalism. Ben tried to intervene. Harry, with respect, we've built our reputation on serious journalism. We've broken major stories and held politicians accountable. Politicians? Harry scoffed. Yes, I'm sure that's very impressive. But what about holding yourselves accountable? What about the damage your industry does with its constant intrusion and speculation? We're not the tabloid press, Richard interjected, his tone sharper now. We don't chase people down the street or camp outside their homes." Harry's laugh was bitter. "No? Then explain to me why your producers spent 2 weeks calling my representatives, practically begging for this interview, only to sit here and pretend this is some kind of public service." The accusation hit like a slap. Susanna felt her professional mask slip for just a moment, revealing a flash of genuine anger at the unfairness of the attack. "We invited you because your charity work deserves attention," she said, her voice firmer now, "because the causes you support matter to people. If you think that's somehow manipulative or insincere, then perhaps you misunderstood the purpose of this interview." "Perhaps I did," Harry said, his voice cold. "Perhaps I expected too much from a show that treats serious issues like morning entertainment." The insult was so blatant, so unnecessarily cruel, that even the production team began to shift uncomfortably. This had gone far beyond a difficult interview and into something much more hostile. Susanna took a breath, choosing her words carefully. "Your Highness, we invited you here in good faith to discuss work that you clearly care deeply about. Our viewers are people who get up every morning, go to work, raise their families, and yes, they care about important issues. They deserve better than to be dismissed as entertainment seekers. And I deserve better than to be ambushed by gotcha journalism disguised as friendly chat," Harry fired back. "Ambushed?" Ben's voice rose slightly. "What ambush? We asked you about your charity work, which is literally why you're here." Harry turned to face Ben directly, his expression darkening. "Don't play games with me. I know how this works. You start with the soft questions, build up trust, then go for the kill. Well, let me save you the trouble." "What are you talking about?" Susanna asked, genuinely confused now. "We've asked you one question about veterans' mental health. That's hardly an ambush." "One question," Harry repeated mockingly. "Right. And what was the next question going to be? Something about my family? My personal life? My wife? Because that's what you people always want to talk about, isn't it?" The accusation was so unfounded that Susanna actually looked genuinely surprised. "We had no questions prepared about your personal life. This interview was scheduled specifically to discuss your charity initiative. That's what we agreed to, and that's what we intended to stick to." Harry's response was immediate and harsh. "I find that very hard to believe. Your show thrives on controversy and personal drama. Why would today be any different?" The attack on their integrity was the final straw for Richard. "Now hang on just a minute. We've been nothing but professional and courteous. We invited you here to talk about something you care about, and you've spent the entire time insulting us and our audience. What exactly is your problem?" Harry's eyes flashed with anger. "My problem is being treated like a performing monkey for your ratings. My problem is sitting here while you pretend to care about veterans when what you really want is a soundbite for your highlight reel. That's completely unfair," Susanna said, her voice rising slightly for the first time. "We've covered veterans' issues extensively. We've raised hundreds of thousands of pounds for military charities. To suggest we don't care is not only wrong, it's insulting to the work we've done." "Work you've done?" Harry's voice was incredulous. "You mean sitting in a comfortable studio asking questions? That's your contribution to helping veterans?" The contempt in his voice was unmistakable now. Even the camera operators were looking uncomfortable as they witnessed what was becoming a character assassination of the hosts who had welcomed him with nothing but respect. Ben leaned forward, his patience clearly wearing thin. "Harry, I think you need to take a step back here. We're trying to help you promote your charity work, and you're attacking us for doing exactly what you asked us to do." "What I asked you to do?" Harry's voice rose dangerously. "I never asked to be patronized by people who have never served their country, never put their lives on the line, never experienced real sacrifice. What gives any of you the right to speak about veterans' issues?" The personal attack hit deep. Susanna's composure finally cracked slightly, though she maintained her professional tone. "With respect, Your Highness, you don't know anything about our personal experiences or backgrounds. You're making assumptions about people you've never met." "Am I?" Harry challenged. "Tell me then, Susanna, what's your military background? What qualifies you to discuss PTSD and trauma?" "I don't need to have served in the military to care about veterans," she replied firmly. "I don't need to have experienced combat to want to help people who have. That's called basic human compassion." Harry laughed coldly. "Compassion? Is that what you call it when you invite someone on your show and then judge them for not performing to your expectations?" "Nobody's judging you," Richard interjected. "We're trying to understand why you're being so hostile when we're here to support your cause." "Support my cause?" Harry's voice was filled with disdain. "You mean exploit my cause for your ratings? Let's be honest about what this really island. You booked me because my name brings viewers, not because you care about veterans." That's not true, Susanna said, her voice stronger now. Yes, having you on the show brings attention to important issues. That's the whole point. The more people who hear about your charity work, the more help those veterans receive. Isn't that what you want? What I want, Harry said slowly, each word deliberate, is to not be lectured by people who live in glass houses about service and sacrifice. The metaphor hung heavy in the air. Ben shifted in his chair, clearly struggling to understand where this animosity was coming from. Glass houses? He asked. What exactly are you implying? Harry's smile was sharp and unpleasant. I'm not implying anything. I'm stating it clearly. You sit here every morning, safe in your studio, commenting on world events and judging people you've never met. You create controversy for entertainment value, then act surprised when people get upset about it. We report the news, Susanna said firmly. We interview people who are making a difference in the world. That includes you, which is why you're here. I'm here, Harry said, his voice turning icy, because I was told this would be a serious discussion about helping veterans. Instead, I'm sitting across from people who clearly think I'm here for their amusement. What has given you that impression? Richard asked, genuinely baffled. We've asked you one question about your charity work. That's literally what you came here to discuss. Harry's response was swift and cutting. It's not what you've asked. It's how you've asked it. It's the looks you're giving each other. It's the way you're sitting there like you're waiting for me to slip up so you can have your gotcha moment. The accusation was so paranoid that the hosts exchanged genuine looks of confusion, which only seemed to fuel Harry's anger further. There it is again, he said, pointing at their expressions. That's exactly what I'm talking about. The smug superiority. The belief that you know better than everyone else. Harry, Susanna said, her voice taking on a maternal tone despite her rising frustration. I think you might be misreading the situation here. We're not your enemies. We're not trying to trap you or embarrass you. We genuinely want to hear about your charity work. Don't, Harry snapped, his voice sharp as a whip. Don't you dare talk to me like I'm a child having a tantrum. I know exactly what's happening here. The rebuke was so harsh that Susanna actually recoiled slightly. The entire studio fell silent, except for the hum of equipment and the distant sounds of the newsroom beyond the glass walls. Ben tried to salvage the situation. Okay, let's reset here. Harry, you have 3 minutes of live television to talk about something you care deeply about. Veterans who need help are watching. What do you want to tell them? What I want to tell them, Harry said, his voice dripping with contempt, is that they deserve better advocates than morning television hosts who treat their suffering like content for entertainment. The attack was so vicious and unprovoked that even Richard, known for his sometimes controversial comments, looked genuinely shocked. That's completely out of line, Susanna said, her professional mask finally slipping to reveal genuine anger. We have raised money, awareness, and support for veterans. We've given platforms to military families and highlighted issues that need attention. To suggest otherwise is not just wrong, it's deeply unfair. Unfair? Harry's laugh was bitter. You want to talk about unfair? Unfair is having your service questioned by people who have never worn a uniform. Unfair is being expected to smile and be grateful while you're being used for ratings. Nobody questioned your service, Ben said firmly, and nobody's using you for anything. You agreed to this interview to promote your charity. We're trying to help you do that. Harry leaned back in his chair, his expression cold and dismissive. Help me? Is that what you call this interrogation? What interrogation? Richard exploded. We asked you about veterans' mental health. That's not an interrogation. That's the topic you wanted to discuss. Don't raise your voice at me, Harry said, his tone dangerous and quiet. I won't be shouted at by a game show host pretending to be a journalist. The insult hit Richard like a physical blow. His face reddened, and for a moment it looked like he might respond in kind. But Susanna quickly intervened. That's enough, she said firmly. Your Highness, I don't know what's happened to upset you, but taking it out on my colleagues is unacceptable. Richard is an accomplished broadcaster with decades of experience. Experience doing what? Harry shot back. Making small talk with celebrities? Discussing recipe tips? That's not journalism. That's entertainment masquerading as news. The contempt in his voice was palpable now. The production team behind the cameras were staring in disbelief at what they were witnessing. You have no idea what you're talking about, Susanna said, her voice rising slightly. You're sitting here insulting people who have done nothing but try to help you share your message. You're attacking an audience that supports the causes you claim to care about. What exactly are you hoping to achieve? Harry's response was immediate and cutting. What I'm hoping to achieve is some honesty about what this really island. This isn't journalism. This isn't public service. This is voyeurism dressed up as concern. That's your opinion, Ben said, his voice tight with controlled anger. But it's not based on anything that's happened in this interview. You've been treated with nothing but respect and courtesy. Respect? Harry's voice rose dangerously. Is it respectful to book someone under false pretenses? Is it respectful to sit there with your predetermined narrative, waiting for me to conform to your expectations? What false pretenses? Susanna demanded. What predetermined narrative? We asked you about helping veterans. That's what you're here to discuss. Harry stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. The sudden movement caught everyone off guard, and the cameras automatically tracked his movement. This is exactly what I expected, he said, towering over the desk. The moment someone doesn't play along with your little game, you get defensive and hostile. We're not being hostile, Richard said, though his voice betrayed his growing anger. We're trying to understand why you're attacking us when we're doing exactly what you asked us to do. Harry looked around the studio with obvious disgust. What I asked you to do was treat serious issues with the gravity they deserve. Instead, you've turned this into a circus. The only person who's created any kind of circus here is you, Susanna said, her patience finally exhausted. You've spent the entire interview insulting us, our colleagues, our audience, and our profession. We've done nothing but try to give you a platform to discuss your charity work. Harry's eyes flashed with something dangerous. Platform? Is that what you think you're providing? A service to me? We're providing a service to the veterans you claim to care about, Ben said firmly. Or we would be, if you'd actually talk about them instead of attacking everyone in the room. The comment clearly struck a nerve. Harry's face darkened, and when he spoke, his voice was low and threatening. Don't you dare question my commitment to veterans. Don't you dare suggest that I don't care about their welfare. Nobody is questioning your commitment, Susanna said, standing up as well, her voice steady but firm. But your behavior right now is doing more damage to your cause than any question we could ask. Harry stepped closer to the desk, his face flushed with anger. My behavior? My behavior is the problem? Not the fact that you people treat everything like a soap opera? Sit down, please, Ben said, also rising from his chair. You're making our guests and crew uncomfortable. Your guests? Harry's voice cracked with incredulous anger. I am your guest. And this is how you treat guests? By ganging up on them when they don't give you what you want? We're not ganging up on anyone, Richard said, remaining seated but clearly tense. We're trying to conduct an interview, and you're making it impossible. Harry whirled around to face Richard directly. Impossible? What's impossible is trying to have a serious conversation with people who think journalism is asking softball questions and nodding along politely. We haven't asked any softball questions because you haven't let us ask any questions. Susanna's voice rose above its usual measured tone. You've spent 15 minutes attacking us for crimes we haven't committed, haven't you? Harry's voice was getting louder now, echoing slightly in the studio. Haven't you already decided what story you want to tell? Haven't you already written the headlines in your heads? The only story here, Ben said, his voice tight with controlled frustration, is a guest who came on our show and immediately started insulting everyone around him for no apparent reason. Harry's laugh was sharp and humorless. No apparent reason? The reason is standing right in front of you. The reason is this entire charade you call journalism. That's it, Susanna said, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. I've had enough. Your Highness, you're being incredibly rude to people who invited you here in good faith. You're insulting our audience, our profession, and our colleagues. This ends now. Harry's eyes widened slightly, as if he couldn't believe she was standing up to him. Excuse me? You heard me, Susanna continued, her voice growing stronger. You came here to talk about helping veterans. Instead, you've spent the entire time attacking everyone in this room. Our viewers tune in to be informed and entertained, yes, but they also expect basic courtesy and respect. You're showing neither. Don't lecture me about courtesy, Harry snapped back. Where was the courtesy when you booked this interview under false pretenses? What false pretenses? Ben demanded, his patience completely exhausted. For the 10th time, what exactly did we promise you that we haven't delivered? Harry's response came fast and venomous. You promised me a serious platform to discuss serious issues. Instead, I get morning television hosts who think they're qualified to discuss trauma and sacrifice. We never claimed to be qualified to discuss anything, Richard said, his voice rising. We claim to be qualified to ask questions and let you provide the answers. But you won't answer anything. You just keep attacking us. Because your questions are insulting, Harry shouted back. Your entire approach is condescending and manipulative. The word shouted hung in the air. The studio fell completely silent, except for the sound of Harry's heavy breathing. Even the production crew behind the cameras had stopped moving. Susanna took a deep breath and spoke with deadly calm. "Your Highness, you need to lower your voice. You're shouting at people who have done nothing wrong." "Nothing wrong?" Harry's voice was still loud but slightly less aggressive. "You've done everything wrong. This entire interview has been a disaster from the start." "The only disaster here," Ben said quietly, "is your behavior. We asked you about veterans' mental health. That's it. Everything else has been your choice." Harry pointed an accusatory finger at Ben. "Don't try to rewrite history. I know what this was supposed to be, and I know what you've turned it into." "We've turned it into nothing," Susanna said, her voice like steel. "You've turned a simple interview about charity work into a personal attack on everyone in this room." "Personal attack?" Harry's voice cracked again. "You want to see a personal attack? A personal attack is booking someone and then ambushing them with your agenda." "What agenda?" Richard exploded, finally losing his composure. "What bloody agenda are you talking about? We asked you about helping veterans. That's not an agenda, that's the topic you agreed to discuss." "Don't swear at me," Harry said, his voice dangerously quiet again, "and don't pretend you don't know exactly what you're doing." The threat in his tone was unmistakable. Susanna stepped forward slightly, positioning herself between Harry and her colleagues. "That's enough," she said, her voice carrying absolute authority. "Your Highness, I'm going to ask you once to sit down, calm down, and either discuss your charity work or end this interview." Harry stared at her for a long moment, his face a mask of barely contained rage. "Are you giving me an ultimatum?" "I'm giving you a choice," Susanna replied evenly. "Be our guest and talk about something that matters to you, or continue this attack on people who don't deserve it." "People who don't deserve it?" Harry's voice rose again. "What about what I don't deserve? What about being treated with basic respect instead of being used for your ratings grab?" "You've been treated with nothing but respect," Ben said firmly, "until about 15 minutes ago when you started shouting at us." Harry turned to face Ben with fire in his eyes. "I wouldn't have to shout if you people would listen." "Listen to what?" Susanna demanded. "You haven't said anything about veterans or your charity. You've spent the entire time complaining about being here?" "Because being here is a mistake," Harry shouted. "Because this whole thing is exactly what I expected it would be." The admission hung in the air like a confession. Richard leaned forward slightly. "So, you came here expecting to hate it? You came here planning to be difficult?" "I came here hoping to be wrong," Harry said, his voice still loud but with a slight tremor now. "I came here hoping you'd prove me wrong about what you really are." "And what are we exactly?" Susanna asked, her voice dangerously calm. Harry looked around the studio with obvious contempt. "You're everything that's wrong with modern media. You're vultures, pretending to be concerned citizens." The insult was so vicious and unprovoked that even the usually unflappable Susanna looked genuinely shocked. "Right," she said, her voice cutting through the silence that followed. "That's it. This interview is over." Harry's eyes widened in surprise. "What?" "You heard me," Susanna continued, her voice growing stronger with each word. "This interview is over. You've insulted our audience, our colleagues, our profession, and our integrity. You've shouted at people who invited you here to help promote your charity work. You've turned what should have been a positive discussion into a character assassination." "You can't end the interview," Harry said, though his voice had lost some of its earlier confidence. "Yes, I can," Susanna replied firmly. "This is our show, our studio, and our decision. And I'm making the decision that our viewers deserve better than watching someone attack people who are trying to help them." Harry looked around the studio as if expecting support from somewhere. Finding none, his expression hardened again. "This is exactly what I expected," he said, but his voice lacked the venom it had carried earlier. "The moment someone challenges you, you shut them down. The moment someone starts shouting and insulting everyone around them, yes, we shut it down," Ben said. "That's called maintaining standards." "Standards?" Harry laughed, but it sounded forced now. "What standards? The standard of only having guests who tell you what you want to hear? The standard of treating people with basic human decency," Richard said quietly. "Something you failed to do from the moment you sat down." Harry opened his mouth as if to respond, then seemed to think better of it. The fight appeared to be going out of him as the reality of the situation sank in. "Your Highness," Susanna said, her voice professional again but with an edge of finality, "I'm going to have to ask you to leave. This interview is over, and we're going to go to a commercial break." Harry stood there for a moment, looking genuinely surprised that his behavior had consequences. "You're seriously asking me to leave?" "I'm not asking," Susanna replied. "I'm telling you, you've made it impossible to continue this interview, and you've been disrespectful to everyone in this room. It's time for you to go." The prince looked around the studio one more time, his expression cycling through anger, disbelief, and something that might have been embarrassment. Finally, he straightened his jacket and walked toward the studio exit without another word. As the studio doors closed behind him, Susanna turned back to the cameras with her professional composure restored. "We'll be right back after this break," she said calmly, and the red recording light finally went dark.